Welcome, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Goodman, Director of Marketing and Development for the YMCA of Northwest Louisiana. We're here at 318 Latino Studios for Shreveport-Bossier, my city, my community, my home. And this is going to be an awesome discussion. Our guest today is Oliver Jenkins. Oliver, thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Thanks for thinking of me.
Absolutely. Well, one of the themes I want to explore with you today is how to get more people like Oliver Jenkins in our community. To highlight but a few things about your life and career so far, you received your BA from Dartmouth, and if I make any mistakes, correct me, please. You received your BA from Dartmouth, flew 150 combat missions over a 20-year career as a Marine, served 2 terms on the Shreveport City Council, and are currently the board chair of the Shreveport Airport Authority. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. And the president and CEO of Phillips Energy.
That's good.
You once said, I pulled this quote from you. You once said, we need people to step up across the spectrum, in my opinion, to serve, whether it's in the military or their community. So my first question for you today is, talk to me a little bit, if you could, about who taught you this sense of service, and where do you think you learned this trait that has been such a key part of who you are?
Well, that's quite a question to unpack there to start with. I'll say this. First of all, when I went into the military, I had some family members that had been in the military, and I think it wasn't necessarily a sense of service that drove me to it initially. It was more of I wasn't ready to sit behind a desk in New York City at a bank somewhere. It was more spirit of adventure, see the world, have a very active lifestyle. So that's what appealed to me. But once I got in it, then that sense of service and what that meant to me and the personal reward, I think, became a lot more clear. And then fast forward 20 years, I moved back to Shreveport, and I think a lot about the city I grew up in, how I thought about our city as a youth, and then what I could do to, give back some of that. And then the other part that I always say, and when people are critical of Shreveport, is, well, just think of all the great opportunities there are for success here. And keeping that spirit of, here's something that I think could be improved, and that's an opportunity, right? That is, you've got to have a place where, you can find the opportunity and be able to have some impact. And I think that's a unique thing about this city, and I also think it's probably the spirit of service that kind of, it's, self-perpetuating in that regard, certainly here in Shreveport.
So let's talk 9/11 for a second. My question for you is, first, tell me where you were on 9/11, and then where you spent the next few days and months following 9/11.
First, obviously, you've done some research, so I better bring my A game on these questions. So 9/11 in Miramar, flying F-18s.
And Miramar is?
Miramar is San Diego, California. I was supposed to fly a plane that day with my wingmen to Hawaii with a tanker air refueling. And then ultimately we were going to Japan for a 6-month deployment, standard rotation. I can remember distinctly being in the shower, and my wife was, I think it was, 6:30 in the morning or whatever. And my wife is watching TV in the next room, turning on the morning news, and she's like, you better get out here. This may change your plans. Anyway, long story short, I went into the base immediately, stood alert, because at that time we were worried about other attacks, both on the West Coast and the East Coast. And so anybody that was scheduled to fly, they loaded up missiles on active duty aircraft, and we stood alert, really just, available if there was something else that was going to happen. Fast forward 2 days later, my unit was being sent to Southeast Asia and flew out basically due west to meet up with my unit, ultimately in Guam. One of the most eerie aspects of that, and San Diego is a very busy airspace, so there's a lot of commercial aircraft and there's a lot of civilian aircraft flying up and down the coast. So this is 2 days after September 11th, and take off out of Miramar, and I turn on my air-to-air radar, and I don't see any hits on my radar. So I think, oh, there must be something wrong with my radar. And I say to my wingman, hey, you picking up anything on the radar? And normally you'd see tons of traffic out there. He said, no, sir, I'm not seeing anything. And I check in with Los Angeles Center, and I said, hey, this is Hornet 15. I'm passing 2,000 feet for 10,000, looking for higher, like I'm ready to climb up. And he said, you're clear. And I said, clear? Clear to where? And they said, well, you two are the only airplane in the Western Hemisphere flying today. The only other place that there's an airplane is your tanker, and if you head due west, you'll ultimately run into him. And so it was a pretty eerie sensation to be flying around really with nobody else in the sky, flying right over LA's airport.
And that's because everyone else
was grounded. Everybody was grounded. The only plane besides the tanker, there were some flights flying in Hawaii, moving people from Honolulu to the islands and trying to manage, the people that were stuck there ultimately. So pretty eerie feeling. Ultimately, we see our tanker and get gas and make it, I think we made it to Hawaii the first day without any interruption. So it was good.
And then after that, I know you were very involved for many months and maybe even years thereafter. So just give me kind of a snapshot of some of Oliver Jenkins' 2001 to 2003.
So we ended up spending a fair amount of time in Guam, flying support missions to protect some U.S. assets in what is, I guess, Southeast Asia. And then ultimately, we went to Thailand to potentially fly some missions into Afghanistan, which didn't happen. But we spent a lot of time, I would just say, protecting assets that we had in Southeast Asia. Then 6 months later, ultimately made it back to the United States. I was home for approximately 6 months, and then got sent to Kuwait in preparation for Iraqi freedom. Ended up being the chief operations for the Marine F-18s there, and flew missions, through most of the days of the high intensity conflict. So living in a tent for the better part of 6 months in Kuwait, and then ultimately made it back to San Diego, I'm going to say in late May, early June. But pretty busy time. Definitely, you don't think about, how much your body can withstand. And I don't mean like, yes, running a marathon or what have you. But everybody thinks about, you need 7 hours of sleep and to do this and, get it. I mean, I think in my first month there, I averaged about 4 hours of sleep a night, average. And I'm flying missions and running an operation. And there were times that, certainly I could have used more rest, and maybe I didn't need to fly as much as I did, but we were very busy, and every bit of it, every resource, whether it's human or equipment or whatever, we were using it to the max. So it's a pretty exciting time, but I was pretty tired by the end of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it's amazing what adrenaline and probably training and preparation can all do.
Absolutely.
So as I mentioned earlier, you served 2 terms on the Shreveport City Council from 2010 to 2018. What I want you to do now, if you could, is talk to me a little about your legacy. And what I mean by that is, what do you count among your greatest achievements while on the council? And then maybe a few of your main regrets.
Okay, that would have been one that I probably should have prepared a little bit more for ahead of time, because it has been a couple years. One thing for sure was our first bond proposal that we got through, and
so we're under what mayor at this point?
we are under Cedric Glover.
Okay.
Interestingly, I had zero legislative experience, and my first day on the job, so to speak, as a city councilman, they elected me chairman. And I was like, well, first of all, I haven't even lived in the United States. I mean, for only a year now. I've been overseas for the better part of 5 years and then deployed a bunch before that. And I don't know much about municipal government. And I remember Cedric saying, don't worry, you can figure it out. It's not going to be a burden for you. And so part of this was this idea that we really need to do a bond project. And there's some great things. We were talking about Kirby's, definitely for new facilities, reinvesting in a lot of our SPAR projects, streets. It was the beginning stages of the whole water issue and consent decree. And so there was a lot of things. And really that kicked off a lot of the stuff that has been now perpetual reinvestment, just because finally somebody had not necessarily me that had the courage, but really to come forward and say, hey, look, we need to treat some of these things that are in the ground that people are not seeing. Shiny fire truck is great, but our city is largely infrastructure is decaying underneath the streets. So
I should remember this, but I don't. So the first bond, so was there a bond passed in this period?
2010 bond.
Okay.
2010 bond issue. And I remember distinctly Sam Jenkins, no relation, was my vice chair. He's currently a senator, coming in to my office and saying, okay, tell me what we're going to do. And he's like, it's your job to figure this out. Not like what's in the project, but how we're going to get this deal passed. You got 7 city councilmen, all with interest in putting money into their districts, and maybe some kind of, I'll call it, disparate priorities about where these monies need to go. And the fact that he and I had very different backgrounds and obviously different ethnic makeup, and he had a voice of a very different constituency than I did. Our ability to work together is something that I would say both he and I are very proud of. So that would be an achievement, and the goal at the end is, actually getting it passed, which anybody who's looked at Shreveport bond issues since has not been a given by any means. And nor to actually, the nice thing about passing a bond issue in your first term is you really have 3 to 4 years to implement, budget, track, and adjust, your financial priorities given that. So that was something that I'm very proud of. Now, obviously, criticism would be, well, how come we still have to do more stuff? And I'm just saying that, if we're not investing in infrastructure, where it's a losing battle every year. So I'd say that's one. I'd say another thing that we were able, due to where the financial markets were and some of my background and some good people working with Cedric, able to get some very good rates on our bonds, so they weren't too burdensome on debt. We were able to restructure a fair amount of financing. And then ultimately, though people wouldn't believe it, we were able to do a bond without it impacting anybody's taxes and, in fact, lowering them slightly. So that was, you have to have a lot of things going right for that to happen, but you also have to have a will and folks willing to, support it. And I'd say the last part, just to say, is, our city council districts, they're largely the same. We had people from different backgrounds. And by and large, we were able to pass and get accomplished a lot of stuff. And, it was rarely a 4-3 vote, mostly unanimous, or 6-1, or, not the gridlock that you see in other governments today, whether it's city council or DC,
And why do you think that was?
I think there were maybe, number one, a spirit of cooperation. Just in those days, the idea of working together. Social media hadn't really caught on in terms of being able to be so critical of somebody behind their back, which is, doesn't yield necessarily a great working environment. And I also think that, some type of a spirit still of good government was helpful. Like the government's not necessarily in it for themselves, or there weren't a whole lot of agendas in our group. Racial makeup, I guess it was 3 African Americans and 4 whites, 4 Democrats, 3 whites. So it's pretty balanced. And Jeff Everson definitely had a crossover district. And then Sam was just a very easy guy to work with. Joe Shine, he had been around government a bunch. And the great thing about Joe, I would say, if he was sitting in here, he told you where he stood from the beginning and didn't waver on that, right? In the end, you need that honest dialogue. I'm not going to support this, or I am going to support it. And being able to just count on people in that regard. In the end, you got to find 4 or 5 gals, to support something. And spending a lot of energy trying to accommodate somebody that's never going to see it your way, or vice versa. Just having that honest dialogue, I think, was very helpful. Joe and I bet we voted on more stuff together than any other councilman out there. So really appreciated his spirit, and, he's savvy. He's a savvy gentleman, very savvy in government. So I appreciate it.
What about 1 or 2 things that you look back on and say, God, I wish we could have tackled that, or I wish we could have done a better job with this?
It would have to be the dog park deal. The amount of energy for those the end result, I think, was positive. People really liked it. But the amount... We're
talking about the one on Clyde Fant.
Stoner. We just spent a lot of capital, human capital. Just a lot of arguments around something that, was way more about politics than policy. And that was just unfortunate.
All right. So you have 2 kids. My next question for you is, what would have to change, if anything, for you to want them to come back and be important members of this community like you and your wife, Ann, have been?
Well, we got to start with opportunity, right? There needs to be opportunities. There aren't, we don't have necessarily a family business for them to enter into that, for them to just start right away. So there's got to be some opportunity, growth industries that are interesting to them. So that would be first and foremost. I think the other part of it is having, one of the best things about Shreveport is affordability and ease of life. We're a long way from turning this, in my opinion, into the most appealing place for people right out of college. There are a lot of things going on in Shreveport, and you could look at my calendar, certainly went on the council. There was always something to do, but there are less things to do, frankly, for 20-year-olds than there are for parents and older adults. So I think understanding, giving them an opportunity to go somewhere else, see what another city has to offer, and then recognizing the great opportunities there are here in Shreveport and the ease at which and the affordability of Shreveport. Now, there are plenty of opportunities, and I hope those continue to grow. But I think getting an aspect of going somewhere else and reminding yourself of what you appreciated about Shreveport and being at a stage in your life where you can, maximize that opportunity. Say that.
Yeah, love it. All right, so my last formal question before I come back to you is just, as you look out at the community, what are some of the things that make you feel that we might be headed in the right direction?
The affordability piece is key, both in terms of real estate, green space. Now we absolutely need reinvestment in our urban core, but the cost to do so is just so cheap here relative to anywhere else.
And let me just interrupt one second. When you say green space, what are we talking about
or just like places where you can expand your city, right? Using the port as an example,
Okay,
right?
okay.
There's unlimited.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to come and build,
like greenfield versus brownfield, or what?
yes, but there's plenty of both, right? I meant just more the idea that we're not constrained by geography, right? And we have a very good road network. I mean, the fact that you can go anywhere in 15 minutes, there aren't many cities of our size that can say that. And there's plenty of opportunity for reinvestment. The idea, we're building this sawmill up in Plain Dealing, that I'm on the board of that, and that's just a great opportunity. We have plenty of the wood, and we have plenty of the infrastructure to market it, whether it's through the port, through the rail, through our interstate system. I've always said the opportunity that I think we're missing is I-69, and that is, anybody who drives to Houston that doesn't believe it's being built, leaving Houston, the exit is I-69. I mean, it's there, and you get to about Lufkin, and then you get back on I-59. But it is being built, and I hope Shreveport isn't passed by and it goes around us to I-30. I-30. I do know that Senator Cassidy has put some dollars towards a road to the port from 49, which will be, ideally transitioned to an I-69. The interesting thing, there's not a city in America with 3 interstates that's less than 1 million people. So we can argue whether it's the chicken or the egg that brings it, but for us to go from MSA of 450,000, I guess is what we claim today, to 1 million, that would be the quickest fix in my mind. So that's a tremendous opportunity.
I-69.
I-69 specifically. It opens up the backside of Barksdale. It opens up, it takes some of the traffic off of, people moving through the city of Shreveport on I-20, which is the gridlock certain times. Plus, we got a big project going on there. But
Who's spearheading advocacy for I-69 right now for our community?
Really, the port is. It used to be, Low Walker was really a big spearhead for it because he saw the development of Bossier and the access. If you can imagine an interstate going around the backside of Barksdale Air Force Base, that would open up some land for part of the port on the Bossier side, and just, kind of full circle, a way of getting around Shreveport without having to go right through the middle, right? So I think that's an opportunity that still exists. We haven't lost it, but somebody needs to champion it big time in government and access to a lot of federal dollars. I think cheap energy is another thing. Natural gas, it's abundant here, and any manufacturing or warehousing facility really benefits from cheap energy, as well as data centers, AI manufacturing. All that really would be served well here. And you see the prices as Dallas expands and expands, how expensive it is, 3 to 4 times a square foot for what it is in Shreveport. So I would think eventually we're going to start getting more of we've got the one Amazon facility, and whether we get a Zappos next or whether there are a lot of those different, kind of warehousing distribution networks that are going to be looking at Shreveport because of our infrastructure and would make it even more appealing if we had I-69.
And this wasn't really a planned question, but you got back here, in 2009, 2010?
2009, yep.
Do you look around and go, okay, fast forward 15 years, we're better than we were 15 years ago, we're same, we're worse?
I hate to say worse. I would say that we've missed some opportunities. The natural gas piece, when there was a lot of money coming into this town, it's a shame we don't have more to show for it in the region. Now, definitely, if you think about outlying communities and schools and, DeSoto Parish, and they invested a lot of money in some really nice projects there.
And define, when you say we missed, what is a miss
you would think you would think that we would have a more sustainable economy, that if you had taken all those dollars, secondary, primary, tertiary, whichever way you want to think about those dollars, being able to broaden our economic base by whether it's investing in infrastructure or using it to bring new businesses here. By the way, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't even include Shreveport Airport. Shreveport Airport is a huge potential. You go to an airport with that much room to expand. We are always entertaining groups that are interested in bringing facilities here to refurbish aircraft, or manufacturing groups that want access to a runway, and we have tons of space. And that's a hidden gem that, frankly, is being underutilized. So when I say we missed the opportunity, I just wish we had more to show for it. For instance, now the problem
is it because we made bad decisions? Is it because people kept their money to themselves?
Or we weren't as unified you think about Fort Worth and when they had the Barnett Shale. Now they got more money, and a lot of that money was in a very finite amount of people, and it was closer to the city center, right? They really refurbished their almost entire city. The amount of money that the Bass family put in and others, they've turned that city around. It is a great town now. And it's a shame we either didn't have the sustainability of those gas dollars for long enough, or that we weren't unified as a committee on where to invest strategically to really broaden our economic base. Because in the end, there are 3 primary economic drivers, or 4. We've still got the energy industry, we've got healthcare, we have Barksdale Air Force Base, and the casinos. And if you put everybody together in that's like 80% of our employees, right? Or that are secondary effect of those things. And that's pretty shallow. Energy is always going up and down. The gaming industry is definitely ebbed and flowed because you're so function of having the resorts here and hoping nobody nearby builds one closer to Dallas or closer, right? So there's risk. Medical, boy, I really think there's an opportunity to expand there for, what do you call it? Medical tourism, I believe is the term, because people go to MD Anderson. It's becoming very, very difficult. MD Anderson is packed all the time. The hotel infrastructure, it's becoming very, very difficult and expensive. And you think about all the people coming from South America, Central America, that are trying to get healthcare in the United States, and how we can get those dollars here in Shreveport would be a great opportunity. And that could broaden everything. If they're here for a month or 2 for medical care and with a family and all the secondary services and, support groups that would need to be involved, whether it's restaurants and places to live and executive apartments and all that. Great. We still have a dearth of warehouses, which is amazing to me. But maybe we just have poorly utilized or the investment piece to reinvest in some of our North Market warehouses. But I think there's still a lot of opportunities. I'm not one that would say things are worse. Certainly not. I just don't know if they're better. I think the opportunities are still there. And just finding a way to unify the city and the community, because it's just there's only a finite amount of dollars, and the moment you split it up 10 ways, you're not getting 1/10, right? If you keep the whole thing together, you may have a 1.5 ROI on it, and you divide it by 10, and you're lucky to get a 0.9. So the math just doesn't work out. So that would be, something that we should all think about.
Yeah, I love all that. Well, like I told you, Oliver, before we started, I mean, I could spend hours with you and learn tons, and I would love to do it. I know we're not going to do that today, but is there anything I kind of grazed over, anything I didn't hit on that is important to you or that you want to get into? Like I said, we've got all the time.
Yeah, no, I think, 50 Cent and his whole market it's a very interesting concept. Obviously, I know it's worked in other cities, and to a certain extent, he'd like to replicate that here. And I think that's a great opportunity for us. Now, obviously, part of that model is going to require these tax breaks, and I don't know exactly how those votes went yesterday in the legislature and what that meant for movie industry tax credits. I think that's, if you could bring in an organization like that, and he's an extremely driven individual, a lot of plans, he could really reinvigorate downtown, bring more of those properties into commerce, which would be very helpful. I'd like to remain cautiously optimistic and find out, everybody kind of would need to embrace it, and that's hard. But I think it's a great opportunity in terms of a near-term deal. I think things like, I mentioned I-69. I think the port capability and coming up with a way, frankly, to market and or maximize the cheap energy and the way to use that to bring everything from data centers. There's a regulatory piece to that and how to work on some of the burn down. Naturally, the state's going to need to generate its own income because they're state issues, but a way to encourage keeping some of that natural gas here and reducing the regulation or frankly the tax on the producers, if we could dedicate that to infrastructure or fuels for bringing in manufacturing, I think would be very helpful. So those are just things that, that I think about on a day-to-day basis. And then getting more people. We always hear about, hey, there's no good people in government. Well, the people that are saying it, are they the good people that are more capable of doing it? Well, you're looking at yourself, right? Or I'm looking at myself. Like, if I'm criticizing that, why am I not getting involved? And I think that's a spirit that we need to continue to embrace, or, the John Atkins of the world. There's plenty of folks that have put aside business opportunities to be involved in. I think there's more opportunity out there.
And I think it's easy to get disenfranchised. It's easy to feel like I can't do anything about it, so I'm going to complain rather than jump in. But you've proven otherwise, and I applaud you for everything you've done, and I know that you'll continue to do. Anything else you want to?
No, like I said, that it's an opportunity. There are a lot of opportunities here. And every opportunity is a chance for success. And people hopefully can take that to heart and consider investing their time and resources into our community.
Well, I love that thought process. Love having you here, and Appreciate you very much.
It's been fun for me. Thanks for thinking about me.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Okay.
Oliver.
See you, buddy. Take care.